And this is me. Hi. I'm an interdisciplinary artist in Perth, Western Australia, and also an educator with a background in creative learning, visual literacy, visual analysis, community arts, and cultural development. And that's why I'm here at the Creative Bravery Festival, because all of these things to do with being creative are a really great interest to me. My presentation is called Just Gonna Wing It. But firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge that I am coming to you from Whadjuk country. This is where I live and work, and the Whadjuk people of Boorloo, Budja, which means Perth country, are part of the Noongar Nation. And I just want to acknowledge and also thank the ancestors and the elders of the Noongar people, past, present and emerging, and let you know that I acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution that they make to the life of this city and to this region. And if you're not familiar with the Noongar Nation, I've just put a little map up there for you to see. So we've got Australia, I'm down here in Perth, which is in the kind of southwest corner here. And these are all of the language groups and clans of the Noongar people. And we're here, I'm here in Perth, which is Whadjuk country. And I wondered if you guys could just quickly mark my world map there and let me know where you are coming in from. So if you use the annotation button, which is a bit different depending on which computer you're on. So for me, it's up the top, and I can just select to draw a little scribble down here in Perth.
That is amazing. I didn't know you could do that. How did you do that?
Well, it's on the PowerPoint. You just annotate the PowerPoint.
No way.
But
that's amazing.
Little scribbles stay there. You have to actually clear them. But I'll show you that if you like.
Ah, love it.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay. So I can see we're mainly from Perth and the UK, and is that Northern Ireland or Scotland? Oh, look at that. Someone's put an arrow. Jack. Fantastic.
He's lying.
It was an accident. It was an accident.
Oh, you're not really there, Jack. Oh, I'm so
Stop making yourself seem more interested than you are, Jack.
I was going to ask exactly what that island is there. Part of Russia.
Do it. Ask him. See if you can wing it. Ask him.
No. I'm not up for disinformation.
Just make it up. I wouldn't know. All right, thank you. So look, I'll show you what happens, Paul, when I click to the next slide. Ah, why aren't you doing anything? All those scribbles are still there. So I have to go up to the annotate bar and clear them all. There we go. All right, winging it. I've just put this funny little cartoon in because for the last time, stop saying, let's just wing it, because you will hear me say wing it so many times in the next kind of 45 minutes. So I'm just giving you a little bit of a warning. Right, so this is me. I haven't got a lot on these slides, just some things to look at basically. But what I wanted to do first, if you guys don't mind, is just do a little drawing meditation to get us into the swing of things. This is something that I use a lot with the classes that I teach, whether it be adults, people with disabilities, or young primary school students. And I just find that it helps center us, ground us a little bit, and just get us into the right kind of mind space. And I found it especially useful this year with all of the anxiety around COVID and all of the changes. And I'm pretty good here in Perth. I'm really lucky that we're not under any kind of lockdown or restrictions. We're doing quite well in terms of COVID management. But I'm really aware that that's not the case where a lot of people are. And I've got a lot of friends and family in the UK, so there's still quite a high level of anxiety happening around the place as to what you guys are going through. So I'd like you to grab a pencil or a pen if you've got something there that you were thinking about writing notes with, and a piece of paper. It can be any paper, can have lines, or it can be blank. Sit yourselves comfortably, and we're going to do a breathing drawing meditation, which is just simply breathing in and out. And every time we breathe in, we make a mark on the paper. It can be any mark of your choosing. It can be a dot, a line, a squiggle, a swirl, anything that you feel like, whatever comes naturally to you. Every time you breathe in, make a mark. And every time you breathe out, make a mark. And we don't need to do anything special with our breathing, just your normal, everyday, natural breathing. And we'll do it for 2 minutes. So you might like to make sure that you're muted. I'm going to mute myself too for 2 minutes, and we'll just do the drawing. If you're not interested or comfortable in doing this, that's fine. If you don't have a pencil or a paper, fine too. Just maybe sit quietly and focus and notice your breathing in through your nostrils, out through your mouth. Okay, so let's get started now. Just going to mute myself. Okay, that's 2 minutes. This goes so super fast. 2 minutes. That's actually something that I think is creatively brave to do as part of a learning session. And I have been doing this with every session with primary school students in a classroom setting. And they have responded really well to it, and they really love doing it. It's taken a little bit longer for the teachers to come around to the idea, because all up it really takes about 10 minutes to do it, and 10 minutes is a lot of time within a classroom setting. I'm just going back to my PowerPoint. So I was just going to tell you a bit about winging it and what I've discovered over the last couple of months. So quite a bit of talking, a few images, some memes and things. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some discussion and some questions. So, winging it. I have quite a lot of experience of winging it as a parent, as an artist, just winging it at life generally, but as an educator in a classroom or studio classroom kind of setting, not so much. During the COVID restrictions in Western Australia, I was asked to do all of my teaching, all of my art teaching and mentoring workshops online. And this really added to the stress and anxiety that I was already feeling about everything. I wasn't sure what to do, how to do it, wasn't sure how to even plan. I didn't know how my students would respond. I didn't know what kind of access they had to equipment or even to computer technology. So after a bit of initial panic, I just decided that I would not do any plans. And I just wrote out some dot points about how I would like those workshops to look. And I've just popped those up on the screen now. So I wanted them to be practice-led, so use my own art practice to guide the activities. I wanted them to come from a place of kindness, empathy and compassion. Intentional activities with a consistent structure and routine. A focus on making connections, on creating opportunities that slowed everything down, slowed our thoughts just to be in the moment, to notice things and make art together. I wanted to devote time to contemplation and reflection, do activities that empowered us, gave us a feeling of control, and kind of build them around the idea that we weren't in the same room, but we could at least be in the same space or place to quietly and gently support each other. And that's it. That's the only planning I did. And that, I've just put some little pictures for you to look at while I'm talking. Now I did a lot of my people that I worked with and family and friends would say to me, oh, online workshops, what are you doing? And I'd just say, oh, not sure, probably might do something about texture, might do something about line, something about mindfulness, not really sure yet. And a few of them would kind of just laugh and go, oh, so you're just going to wing it. And I guess that's what it sounded like, because I wasn't doing any kind of lesson plans and no prep or anything like that. So in their eyes, I was just winging it. Now, those online workshops are really, really successful. All of the students really responded well. I felt really calm and happy about them. It reduced my anxiety a lot. And I was really proud of what I did with the students. Now, fast forward a couple of months later, all of our, thankfully, restrictions were eased and a lot of the work was getting back to normal. And I found myself teaching creativity in primary schools. And I just spend hours and hours and hours doing plans of what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, what it's going to achieve, what my role is, what the teacher's role is, what the students are going to do. And then driving to school, I just changed my mind and I'd end up winging it. And sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. And I'm not the only one that's been doing this. A lot of my fellow creative practitioners, some of whom are with us today, listening to my talk, have been doing exactly the same thing. So that got me thinking about winging it. So my first thought was, well, teachers have a lot of skills and experience and a lot of passion to support and facilitate learning, but they're all under pressure to submit these detailed lesson plans and assessments that really demonstrate or kind of prove that the curriculum outcomes are being met and that they're being achieved within a particular time frame. So there's not a lot of time or space for kind of using intuition or allowing the students to lead the lessons. And that's kind of what I think winging it would entail. But I still wasn't exactly sure. So I looked up online, and I've been a bit slack with these are just some of my artworks that I did during the online workshop period. See, my idea was that I would gently flick through these as I was talking, all these funny memes about winging it. So I looked up online, and it seems that winging it is not something that is celebrated widely. Yeah, certainly not recommended, not in work or learning environments at least. It seems to be a peculiarly English kind of thing. A lot of, if you speak, at least when I spoke to my American friends, winging it to them a lot of the time means buying a bucket of wings and eating it. So that's like winging it. So it seems to be a bit of an English thing. It's implied a lot that winging it is not knowing what you're doing and relying on luck a lot of the time, that there's a chance that things will work out, but there's a chance that things will fail. And there seems to be a really big link to being unorganised and possibly even lazy. So if you're winging it, is not a good thing. So I looked up the dictionary definition. Sorry, I'm going a bit fast now. Oh, okay. No, I won't do that. The dictionary definition is to accomplish or perform something without full preparation or knowledge, to improvise, to do something without preparation or plans. And that kind of fits a bit with all of these memes that I've been showing you. But if you look back, you discover that it's an English expression from the 1880s. And I'll just read out what I discovered. It comes from the theatre, where it alludes to an actor studying their part in the wings because they have been suddenly called on to replace another. It was eventually extended to other kinds of improvisation based on unpreparedness. So this kind of puts a different spin on it because it implies that there's a level of skill and experience that is already present, and that winging it is kind of a method or a practice or a tool, and that does involve some kind of study or thought or even maybe some planning. So when I read that, I thought, well, I'm going to kind of test these definitions a little bit. So I started to really notice what was happening when I was winging it, try and pay attention to what happened when it worked and what happened when it didn't work, and see if I could work out what the difference was. And what I noticed is that when I use the skills that I use to make my art, which is things like my imagination and my intuition, experimentation, risk-taking, kind of sitting with uncertainty, things like that, then I had more success at winging it. But if I tried to teach according to quite a detailed lesson plan, like a structured formal lesson plan, a plan that I had written myself, if something unexpected happened in that and I tried to wing my way back to the plan, then it didn't work so well. So that got me to think back to these online workshops and why they were such a success. And I think one of the key features was this practice-led idea. So I don't know if you guys, I'm just going to get out of this screen sharing so I can see you. Can you give me an indication if you have ever heard of this term practice-led? Like a thumbs up? Yeah, okay. So I might just read out the definition I've got of practice-led research at least. It often applies in universities and places like that. So practice-led research is an approach that allows you to incorporate your creative practices into the research, legitimizes the knowledge they reveal, and endorses the methodologies, methods, and research tools that are characteristic of your discipline. So my discipline obviously is visual arts, but in the teaching environment, I guess the discipline would be teaching. So I thought, well, maybe winging it is related a bit to being practice-led, like the successful winging it could be practice-led. So I needed a bit more info, so I had a bit of a chat to as many people as I could grab hold of in these kind of weird, busy times, and asked them a few questions about winging it. It wasn't an exhaustive study. I'm certainly not an expert on any of this, but I'll just let you know what I discovered. So one of the questions I asked was, how did you wing it? And most of us have done it, but it hasn't necessarily been intentional. It's been a sudden or a last minute kind of thing, quite reactionary, mostly because like the plan was derailed. Some people have had made a plan and then suddenly changed their mind, like me, do a lot of planning and then change my mind about what I'm doing. Some people are literally called in at the last minute, like that actor in The Wings. Then I asked them, well, what happened when you were winging it? And there were various degrees of successes reported. Sometimes it worked really well and people were happy about what they'd done. But then a lot of the time reports about absolute disasters where lessons or activities or presentations were completely kind of abandoned and derailed, and a real kind of feeling of failure. I asked people what they noticed about winging it, and the common thread that was that most of us felt out of control and uncomfortable, but there wasn't much reflection afterwards. And I think that's because of what we kind of understand winging to be. It's this kind of random, almost lazy, unprepared, bad thing. So if we do wing it, we just kind of feel grateful that we got out alive, and then we don't really want to think about it anymore. I think there's a bit of shame attached to winging it. Another question I asked was, what conditions are needed to wing it? And the common theme was that if winging it's successful, it's when we tap into those skills and experiences that we've already got. And those skills are things that we have done over and over and over and over again throughout our lives. Maybe in different situations, maybe not in a classroom or in a learning environment, but just kind of in life generally or other work. The successes had something to do with responding in an intuitive way to what was going on. But where it was successful, it had to be a safe environment, or at least a place where that kind of uncertainty is not just tolerated, but also supported as well. And that there needed to be a bit of a quick risk assessment or risk management needed, like a really quick, what's the worst that can happen? If I change what I'm doing, what's the worst that can happen, and is that acceptable? And so my final question was, is winging it a good thing or a bad thing, and why? And we couldn't really come to much of a conclusion with that. There's a lot of not sure. It really depends. It depends on the circumstances. It's really hard to tell. You can't just generally say it's a great thing to do, but you can't really say it's not a great thing either. So some other things came up that I haven't had much chance to think too much about or talk with anyone about. Maybe that's something that you guys, I've just seen that a couple of people were waiting to get in. There seems to be some unwritten rules about who can and who cannot wing it, especially in a workplace environment. So I had a really interesting conversation with someone who said, oh yeah, they work in the IT industry. Oh yeah, I could wing it easily, but you wouldn't want your surgeon to do it. But as we talked more, we thought that actually most surgeries, actually cutting people open, probably do involve an element of winging it. because the surgeon doesn't know exactly what she will find when she cuts her patient open. But all of her study and all of her experience means that she has a really good idea of what's going to happen and a good idea of what to expect. But every body is different. But imagine if you were like prepped for surgery and your surgeon said, just going to wing it. It wouldn't really inspire you with much confidence. One of the other things that came up was this idea that there seems to be a bit of a hierarchy about who can and who cannot wing it. I found this in probably more in learning environments, that some people can wing it all the time, but only like the senior people who have lots of experience, whereas a new person is not allowed to wing it as much. And that disciplines can't be transferred. So someone like me, I can't necessarily go into a school and wing it because my discipline is visual arts. So that was quite an interesting kind of hierarchy within there. And there was something also around the, what I call the C word, which is control. Who's got the control? How do we feel about relinquishing that control? Winging it creates a certain degree of uncertainty. And maybe some people feel like we can't have that at work or in the classroom. You know, it's part of our job to be in control of the environment or the activity. And so that, you know, my question would be, is it our job to control the environment? The last thing that, two more things that came up, there was this phrase called teachable moments. I don't know if we could have a hands up if anyone's ever heard that phrase before. Teachable moments, yeah. I'm not that familiar with it because I probably should have told you. I did train as a teacher, but I haven't worked in a school environment full time since last century, which makes me sound really old, but yeah, it's true. Last century, the 1990s. Anyway, so teachable moments. I looked up what it is, and I think it does require a bit of winging it, but it's not particularly intentional. It's what happens when the lesson that you've planned is kind of trucking along and then something happens and you see that as oh, this is a great opportunity to change direction slightly and learn about something else. I'm not saying that they're bad or anything. I'm just not sure it's the same as winging it. So when I talk to people and they'd say, oh yeah, I do teachable moments all the time, I'm not quite sure that that was what I was thinking about. And the final words that came up all the time were plan and planning. It didn't go to plan. I went off plan. I forgot the plan. I didn't plan. I ignored the plan. I didn't plan well enough. So I think there's something in there between the difference between planning, kind of working out what you're hoping to achieve, versus having a plan, like plan A and plan B as a backup. So that was kind of all of the stories that I found. I'm just going to put my screen back up. And I've put this one in about parenting because I think that's the only time that I feel like I'm truly winging it, because I do not have any skills or experience to fall back on there. Anyway, so my brave takeaway is, I think winging it is using our knowledge, skills and experience to support learning in an intuitive way. And there is planning, a beginning idea and a bit of an end goal, but not necessarily a plan. And so my question is, could we actually call it practice-led teaching? And so I had a little bit of a play around with that definition that I read out before, which was from one of the local universities here in Perth, Edith Cowan University, and it was about practice-led research. I've just changed it to be practice-led teaching. So incorporating everything you know and have learnt and have experienced as a human and educator, it acknowledges and legitimizes the knowledge that all your experiences can reveal and endorses the methodologies, methods and tools that are characteristic of your discipline, which is teaching or education. And my action that I'd like you guys to try is to be creatively brave by winging it. So wing it with intention. Trust yourself, your intuition, your skills, your knowledge. Notice what happens, your feelings and how the people around you react. Reflect on what happened. Maybe think about the role that control plays. Share your experiences so that we can start to take away this kind of shame that's attached, or embarrassment. Maybe embarrassment's a better word. Shame might be a bit too serious. And practice winging it and see what happens. And you're probably wondering, did I wing this presentation? And the answer is yes and no. This is kind of how I started. Just a couple of little scribbly notes. I was trying to be clever and work out some way to like do that. What's that, like an acrostic poem? Wing it there with intention, intuition, knowledge, grace, or maybe generosity. And actually planned backwards. So I started here and then went to this and then went from there. So that I'm going to stop sharing that. And invite you all to unmute yourselves and let's have a chat. Have you got any questions or comments or queries or any strong feelings about winging it?
I think, thank you, first of all. I thought that was really thought-provoking, and it's certainly made me think a lot. I can probably come back to there being something in there that's quite important about trust. Mm-hmm. And I think there is something about trusting yourself and having sort of confidence in yourself and your own abilities and skills and so on. Absolutely. I have to say that's probably something that I'm not too hot on sometimes, and so therefore winging it maybe feels a little bit more intimidating because maybe you're not always, you know, the most confident in yourself in comparison to maybe the confidence that others have in you, which I think is an interesting reflection. But I also wonder how much there is around trust in an audience when winging it, or a scenario, or and by that I mean I might be more inclined to wing it with my team who I trust and it's a relatively safe space, as opposed to a more maybe intimidating or scary audience of, for example, funding partners or people external to my organisation. So there's something in there, maybe twofold, about trust for me. I don't have a question actually, that's just a reflection on, I don't know if that'll provoke any conversation, but that was just my reflection on some of the things you've said, so thanks.
No, thank you. I definitely agree that trust is a big thing, and that safe space. That interesting that you use the word safe, because absolutely, because if you were winging it to your potential funders or sponsors, I'd be worried that I look unprepared and lazy And that's not a good look, is it? Yeah. And so that's why I think that there are kind of some unwritten rules about who can wing it and where we can wing it. But I do think it's worth the risk in some learning environments to kind of surrender that control. For me personally, anyway, I've been trying to wing it with intention a lot the last couple of months, basically since I came up with the idea to do this presentation. And there are a lot of benefits for surrendering that control and just seeing what happens.
I'm really interested in the idea of, oh, sorry, Paul.
Sorry, Jake, no, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I'm really interested in the idea of like power and control and like so I'm involved a lot in sport and coaching and coach education. And I see a huge amount of like the coach education is delivered and done to coaches, and it's really structured, and planning is like the first thing that's taught in terms of you have to have and sessions are reflected on and reviewed in terms of how close you were to your plan and all those sorts of things. And like I've been, I suppose, struggling with this dilemma in my head of, do you need to go through and understand how to plan? So is that something that, or are the people I work with just doing it because that's what's always been done? And actually, questions in my mind are, what if we accept it? Because I love the idea of practice-led learning and winging it, and I think that's like going with the flow and responding to who's in front of you. So how do we teach that, for want of a better word, to practitioners going forward, to give them the confidence and courage to be able to do that, but also to challenge the establishments and the systems to say that is a really valuable way to learn? Because otherwise we're just churning out that same old, it's plan, do, review is the words that we use a lot. And yeah, so I don't know, sorry Paul, I jumped in.
No, I was going to say something, but you've sparked something else. It's how the expectations that we place on teachers to organise learning and the tensions that arise between what is planned for and what is allowed to be lived. And when we talk about what is allowed to be lived, then we start talking about winging it. And I think there's interest in the tensions between the attention that we pay and then the intention. So I'm really interested in sort of winging it with intention, because for me, winging it is attention, and it will only work with attention. And the minute that we stray too far into intention, that's where it potentially moves away from winging it. So I was really interested in why you put those words together.
Wing it with intention. I was thinking like almost like plan to wing it. So have your idea that my particular lesson, I'm going to start at this point and then I'm going to wing it, kind of thing. So not have an intention for the result of winging it, but have actually plan to wing it. Like, it would be great if the teacher could submit a plan for the term that just said, we're going to do science and I'm going to wing it, kind of thing. So the intention wasn't, I wasn't thinking about kind of any kind of outcome. It was just that instead of just suddenly winging it by chance or by randomness, that I would actually choose to wing it. If that makes sense.
It's that question mark moment, which I think we've spoken about, that any sort of visual timetable should have a question mark slide in it. And that is the moment that we all decide what happens. And that's the moment I think the teacher allows that control to be handed over in a small way. But if that's allowed to continue, then I think that's where the trust and confidence develops and builds. So you get to the point where it could be all day on Friday, we wing it, and that's accepted. But there's a skill base, I think, that needs to be built up, and a trust that needs to be built up, and confidence that needs to be built up. But I think I understand now why you're using that word, intention.
Is there something in, without going too provocative, is there something within the sort of, and I'm speaking about this sort of Scottish context here, about the structure of the curriculum and working towards an exam-based conclusion and having sort of not productive. I don't know. I haven't finished yet. Is there something about the kind of the structure of not even just our education system, but education systems in general, where there's quite a defined outcome required? Is there something in there that prohibits the creativity of winging it and allowing student-led learning and allowing teachers the opportunity to be perhaps, you know, more or less planned, I guess, in terms of, and less intentional with where they're taking lessons? That's probably something that strikes me, is that there sometimes doesn't feel like in our curriculum that there's necessarily as much space as there could be. And I'm more than happy to be corrected, because I'm not a teacher. And so I'm more than happy to be corrected on that.
In my limited experience within classroom settings, there is really no time or space for responding in an intuitive way to what's happening in the classroom. You're just kind of marching along to that term plan to get to those exams or assessments or report writing at the end, you know, and it's a lot of pressure on the teachers to get that happening.
Is there something as well around when you were saying with intention? So I completely get where you're coming from, but I think what I'm taking from what you're saying is that there's the winging it with intention, and that's based on your sort of your experience, your knowledge, your skills, and being quite, you know, strong in what you know and your area of expertise. Is there something in terms of the winging it piece where you, in order to be able to wing it, you kind of have to have done that planning and that preparation first? Because the example that you gave before about me standing in front of some funders and winging it, that's not going to work if I haven't done my homework and I don't know the facts and the figures and I don't know my argument and so on. There's an element of that I can wing around the benefits of the program that I deliver and that I manage, that I'm really passionate about, and I can wing that all day long. But the bit I can't wing is, you know, knowing that funder, knowing what their priorities are, etc., etc. Because there's something around the preparation and the planning that goes into winging it. Because you're not just winging it, there's actually that piece that comes before. And maybe that's what we need to support young people to understand. I think that's what, if you're developing and encouraging young people to wing it, it's not just a case of stand up there and wing it. There's more to it than that, I think.
And that's why I like that original definition of it being, you know, the actor in the wings, because clearly it's not just some random stranger who's coming off the street who's expected to go out on the stage. It's someone who does have some experience or study in acting. Yeah, so absolutely. Sorry, I cut over someone who...
I was just going to say the example that you gave, Alex, it's quite didactic, that in terms of pitching for funders or having conversations. It's less dialogical, it's less like you can... I guess I think that was my point earlier in regards to like solo winging it and then winging it with others. And yeah, I don't know if you could ever wing a pitch to funders. I think that's probably dangerous. But if you could invite that conversation and do it another way, I guess other things come up. I guess it's like about learning through, like, I guess, constructivist kind of generating knowledge between people.
All right. We've actually only got a couple of minutes left, so has anyone got any final? No? Can I just make you aware that there's still loads of things happening with the Creative Bravery Festival. Have a look at the website, have a little sticky beak around the field, lots of resources in the tool shed, more campfire, sorry, they're called campfire, the big fire discussions, and more things in the tent to check out. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for joining me. I have swung from being very, very nervous to being really relaxed, and then back to nervous again, and now feeling quite happy. Any final words?
Just thank you.
Special thanks to my Perth
really
friendly faces who have come to this. Carissa and Vanessa, thank you. Nice to have a person that I know. And Paul, of course, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.